Welcome back, beautiful people. This is another episode of An Untold Narrative where we host creators and creatives from all over the map with different backgrounds. And today's guest is somebody I've recently met and immediately was attracted to the way that he spoke about his experiences in his life and his creativity. And we introduce Michael Tanzillo, who has an unbelievable background in primarily 3D animation and creation. And through your recent experience at Adobe, you've now started bleeding into the footwear industry, which is why you're even here. And so I'm stoked to have you, man, and thank you for joining us. Maybe how do you feel about people introducing you as a creator, or what is your elevator pitch when somebody asks you what you do?
I mean, in terms of other people saying it, it's still a surreal experience for me to hear myself presented that way. Like it's still, like I'm older now, but it hasn't, that it still hasn't worn off on me that it's a special thing. So yeah, my elevator pitch is that I've been a working in the 3D space for 20 years now. Most of that time was I was spent on animated films, as you mentioned. So I worked for a place called Blue Sky Studios. We made Ice Age movies, Peanuts, Ferdinand, Spies in Disguise, Nimona, which was recently up for an Oscar this year. That was the last film that I worked on. And then within the last 3 years, I've transitioned over into a role at Adobe where I've done 3D, as you said, for footwear, fashion, e-commerce, industrial design, pretty much everything in between. And I've just had my mind blown at how much the industry as a whole, the creative industry as a whole, is using 3D. So my elevator pitch is just basically I try and make everything as beautiful as possible using 3D workflows and things. So that's kind of been my jam for a while.
Yeah, I mean that's exciting, and it's cool that like even after, and I definitely want to pick your brain a little bit about what it's like working on major film productions and animations, like you mentioned, Ice Age, like that's just such a classic that I think everybody knows. Um, but what's it like now, a little bit further in your career, where you're still discovering new industries that you can apply the same tools and techniques that you're good at, right? Like what's that? Is it like feeling like a child again?
A little bit, yeah. It's a little bit, yeah, because you pretty much have to forget everything that you've learned about the process a little bit and understand because I've always said this about the 3D workflows, whether it was footwear, fashion, industrial design, whatever. Every 3D creator, all these 3D industries are like ancient civilizations. They all kind of developed their own way of doing things on their own remote islands that were disconnected from everybody else. Like I know animation, we have these very specific tools and very specific workflows that are designed to make things look as beautiful as possible, regardless of whether or not they are functionally possible, right? Versus like a footwear workflow, which is all about getting to a manufacturing state. That has been the difference to me. I talked about this one of my first presentations to a apparel company. They showed me some renders that they had done that to me looked. I was like, I can make those look better. And so I got their pattern and I created a shirt and it was a plaid pattern and I made the stitching and I did everything and it looked like it was kind of fuzzy. It looked great. And they're like, dude, that's great. How do you know that plaid pattern is the right scale? And I was like, kind of don't. Like I don't. I just kind of eyeballed it. Like I didn't. Oh, it's like oh, and it clicked to me. I was like, oh yeah, you all actually make stuff. Like you actually make the thing. Like you can't just. It can't just be like a visual. Ooh, that's nice to look at. So that's been a big transition for me is understanding how working in 3D is not just about making the prettiest picture you can. In most cases, it's about visualizing what really will happen. Whether it's like architectural visualization, um, things like I just want to put the light over there because I think it would be really cool the way the light like creeps across the scene versus architectural visualization is like, well, that's east. So that's going to be the morning light and that'll be the afternoon light and never will the light come in from this way. So it was very much leaning into an understanding and getting back to the idea of all this stuff has to be based in some reality, which has been fun. It's been a fun transition.
I think it's cool to hear you describe it that way, because I think one of the through lines of creativity as a whole is like there is that sense of like practicality when you boil it down, and like the further you get along in the years of create product creation, regardless if that's 3D animations or actual footwear design, is it's like you pick up on these small details of like of practicality of like, hey, like we can't do it that way because we know the at the end result it is east light versus west light or whatever it is, versus like a novice doesn't know those things. But it's kind of cool that regardless of the industry you're in, that kind of through line stays. And
Mhm.
yeah, I love the way that you kind of put that together. In regards to animation and working on major productions versus what you're currently focused on at Adobe today, what do you is there a difference, or is it a lot of the same skill sets, or is, you know, what if somebody's listening to this for the first time and they've never encountered a 3D artist or anybody who does animations, like is it possible to get into something like that, or is it such a specific niche that makes it really challenging?
I mean, it is a niche thing, but we all started from nothing. Like I was bartending. Like I didn't, um, I was a photographer who was bartending, who watched Finding Nemo and watched the behind the scenes of it, and that's what inspired me to get into this stuff. So there's this like behind the scenes thing of these artists going scuba diving off the coast of Australia to gather reference of how the ocean looked and how they could utilize that to tell different moods at different points in the film. And I was like, man, that's what I really want to do. And so I went back and I studied it. It took a couple years of learning, and I specialized in lighting when I worked on the film. So I did lighting work, and it's definitely possible. But for those types of productions, the biggest difference between that production and what I do now is in those productions, there's like a 600 to 1,000 person crew working on these things, and you narrow down. So there are artists who just do the fur grooming, there are artists that just do the clothing simulations, there are artists that just do the animation, and so you're a part of this larger process that's huge, but you have to be the one of the best in the world at your thing. So it's like the Olympics are going on right now. It's like you're on the gymnastics team, and the pommel horse guy. Like he's the pommel horse guy. Like he needs to do that. You need to be that. You need to be that best thing. Now, in other 3D avenues, what I'm doing now at Adobe, you are much more general. You kind of have to be more well-rounded in doing all of it. Now, the one thing that I should say about whether this creative process, whether you're doing it in 3D or 2D or anything like that, it's the thing that's really struck me is that my creative process remains the same no matter kind of what I'm doing, which is I get the task at hand, or whether it's a personal project or something that's been assigned to me, and then I kind of attack it the same way, which is start off by kind of generally understanding what it is and what I want to make, and that usually involves like a deep dive into reference collection, like putting together whether they're Miro boards, Pure Ref, whatever, just like piecing things together and starting to get ideas. And I have to flip this switch in my head where I like allow myself to get obsessed with things. Like when I was designing a shoe for a presentation last year, and I remember just like flipping the switch in my head and allowing everything that I saw, every material, I was in a rental car, and that had like these lines down the side. I was like, that looks like speed. That looks fast. Like I don't know why that. So I just took a picture of it. I was out to lunch with my wife, and there was somebody sitting at the table next to me wearing these shoes, and I just kind of like snapped a picture. She's like, "Well, dude, what are you doing? Don't ever do that again." It's like, all right, cool. But like but like this process of reference gathering, like designing your approach and then attacking it in your creative medium, whatever that may be, that's true no matter what I'm doing. So there's differences and there's similarities on both
the
processes.
the submersion of yourself, even in your daily life, personal daily life, into a craft, I think is something that separates the greats from the goods, right? And so you've found success in your career. You've kind of been able to grow, manage teams. You now manage even a community, which we'll get into a little bit later. Um, what's something or maybe a handful of things that you think you do better than others in your space? Like is it the soft skills? Is it the hard skills where you're able to mentor and teach people specific ways
Mhm.
to execute something? Is it, you know, are there a couple things that you think that you do really, really well above the pommel horse of Michael Tanzillo? Like what is it?
Um, yeah, because I would say that there are artists with other like hard skills that are better than me. They're better people at doing form, better color, like all that kind of stuff. I think my strengths lie in some of it is just straight up my humility in this stuff and like, dude, I don't know how to do that. I know this person that's better at it, so let me go get them either involved in the project or collaborate with them in some way. I think I think my skill has always been like pulling people together to make a project, and that's why I'm in these leadership positions. Like you said, I run this community because I've been able to have a vision and a humility to it that I know that there are parts of it that I can do well and parts of it that I can't. So I offset the things that I can't do well with people who can, and so I try to bring them together. The other thing is that because I was never a good artist. I was never like a kid who drew nonstop growing up. That wasn't my thing. It took me in my late teens, early 20s before I figured out that being a creative professional was even a thing, and that was something that I was interested in. So I wasn't good at it, and so I had to work really hard to get good at it. And what that left me with was this idea that I can kind of that nothing is like insurmountable, and so I just stay very curious about it and kind of attack it with um, a naive curiosity, like oh yeah, of course I could do anything. Like I was just talking to a friend about this. It was like all the things that a man thinks that they can do, that they definitely can't do, like land a plane that's out of control, like a commercial airliner when it's mid-flight. And we were sitting in traffic jam talking about this, and I was like, I'm also pretty sure that I could drive a getaway car from a bank robbery and get away with it. And I was like, I don't drive that much, but I think I could probably do that. But it's like having this, but like if you take that to the professional realm of just not allowing yourself I'm really good at not talking to myself that I can't do something. You know what I mean? Like um that inner voice torpedoes so much of what people can do. If you can't do that, you won't be good at this. That's not what you do. Blah 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 blah. That I've gotten very good at recognizing that inner voice and squashing it and figuring out a solution to how to do a thing.
That's I love, thank you for the visualization there. Clearly you are in the animation and visualization space, because just the imagery in my brain of you sitting in a car kind of talking about that like really happened in real time. So that was amazing. Um, is that so for those listening, right, and they, want to eventually progress or advance in their careers, their creative careers, right? Do you think that have you ever experienced any backlash to having that sort of like naivete or curiosity or like thought of like, hey, no, I could just figure this out and I don't need to follow the rules? Or has it been like pretty seamless for you?
It's pretty seamless for the most part. I mean, the backlash that I've gotten recently, which surprised me, was that I've always been somebody again who like I feel very fortunate to have found this career path that I was on. Right, it's helped me form incredible friendships with incredibly creative people. It's allowed me to meet people like you who have just been so inspirational, and it's like every day is a joy to it. That I've been always very open. My career goal right now is to get as many people in their creative jobs or 3D or whatever as possible. So I've been trying to open it up. I do free tutorial videos and I try and I try and democratize it as much as possible. What I've gotten pushback on recently is that this democratization can make some people who have been in the industry a long time a little bit frustrated with me, which I didn't expect. It was like I had to work so hard for this and now you're giving it away for free. And I'm like, yeah, I guess, but like it's not mine to own or hold. Like I don't really understand. So that was something that was surprising to me. So and I had somebody else tell me, they're like, yeah, democratization of something can lead to a little bit of frustration and um, pushback from people who feel like they had to do it on their own. It's the same thing that I don't understand why people push back on like the forgiveness of student loans. It's like, well, I had to pay my student loans back. Why should they be forgiven? Like because paying student loans is awful. Like I paid mine off, but that doesn't mean that you should. Like give people the break. I don't know.
Um,
It's an interesting, like I had to go through this, therefore you have to go through this too. It's a weird take.
I'm I'm happy to hear that it's not just like, because there are people who say like the footwear industry as a whole is very gate capped, or it used to be. It's
Mhm.
better now. When I entered 10 years ago, it was a little bit more than what it is currently, but people still talk about it. and to that point of like, hey, like, no, we've earned our stripes, we've worked so hard, like, why do we just why would we give away this information for free? But I think I've never seen somebody in my experience out of the goodness of their soul help other people and it negatively affect them. Like that just doesn't happen, right? So it's like I don't understand the counter argument.
I don't either. It's the same. I just was having this conversation with somebody who came from the photography world who's now transitioning into 3D, saying that, he would be doing product shots or fashion shoots and would be struggling with a certain type of material. Like, how do I capture the silk material in the right way? And they would have a community or a forum or something, and say, like, how do I do this? And the responses would be like, yeah, no, I had to struggle with that for a long time too. That's real difficult, but just keep at it and you'll get there. He's like, well, that doesn't really help me very much because in the, and we talked this through, and I think for us we kind of figured this out because he's found the 3D world to be much more open and people will show him things. And his thought was that any field where the creative process is individual, like a footwear designer, like a photographer, where it's like you are the business in a way, people get much more gatekeepy about that. 3D, it's more of a collaborative workflow. So even though I talk about these films that I work on, I can look at any shot and say, like, yeah, I worked on that shot for a month, but so did 8 to 10 to 12 other artists doing their respective tasks on it. So at no point do I feel like I fully own that thing. So
Wow.
it's I mean there are projects that I do that but like that I've done everything from start to finish, but being in the professional level, you're generally doing things with other people, so you don't feel this sense of personal ownership over stuff. So it creates a little bit more of a collaborative environment.
Yeah, no, I think that's really fascinating to hear, especially at like that large of a scale, right? And that big of a production, and like you kind of have to be collaborative. Like it's essential to the success of what you're working on. It's less individual to your point of something that like let's keep talking about footwear design here because that's the world that a lot of our listeners come from. But what is there like one skill that's helped you a lot in the framework of collaboration or team building or team working? Or some people struggle with it, right? They like they
Hmm.
grow up as a single child, or whatever their youthful experiences are, and then they struggle working with other people. They've played individual sports their entire lives and never any teams. Like there are those people who just like really struggle with collaboration. Is there something that like
Yeah.
you've learned to help people in that realm?
In terms of, yes, I think that there's a few things. One, when you're first joining a collaborative effort, you have to stay quiet and listen a lot more. You have to really kind of understand what's motivating people. I've taken this one on too, which is learning how to communicate with people in ways that they want to be communicated with, or like determining that early in the collaborative process when there are some people who only want to talk to you via like an instant messenger, like a Slack or Discord, message or something like that. There are some people that want to communicate via email. There's some people who like phone calls. There are some people who just kind of like, in finding how people, especially when you're working for somebody, like when you're dealing with a lead type of a position, finding the way that they like to communicate and communicating with them in that way. Some people, are in need to feel like they're tethered to you, whether if you're working in different places, so that when they message you, you message back immediately. Some people are like, no, I just want to hear from you at the end of the day. It's a little bit of an understanding of how other people how other people want to be communicated with, and then matching that pace. I think that's one that I've learned. And then so that's like coming into a team. The other big one that I've been learning in recent years is that if you're trying to do something to institute some sort of change in a process or change in the way that people have done things, it's a very difficult thing to do because nobody wants to change, especially when they've been successful doing a specific workflow. And this is something like, again, talking about footwear, moving from traditionally 2D designs to 3D workflows, just from
Sure.
Illustrator to using other tools. You have to kind of, the old time shoe designers are not going to want to do that. They're not going to want to make that transition because they're like, why should I? I've had all this success doing it this way. So in order to get people to talk to them about changing, you have to meet them where they are, explain to them why this change benefits them, and then show them the steps to get there. Like there has to be a clear benefit for them to make the change, and then a very clear path on how they do that. So if you think about it, like two two land masses with a gap in the middle. Like you can't just go over to the other side and be like, look how great it is over here, because that'll make them want to go, but then they don't know how to get there. So you have to like show them the bridge to get there too. That's something I talk a lot about in my role now. It's like we can talk about different workflows, but if unless we can show them how to get from where they are to to over there, they'll never change.
Michael, this is some like serious. This is exactly what I wanted from you. You are amazing. You're crushing this podcast, and we're not halfway
Thanks.
through. What like you're? It sound like you just sound like a natural born leader. I assume that wasn't always the case. Is there? Have you experienced something along your journey, or somebody, or a mentor, or where did you kind of learn these like specific ideas? And I know even the last example
Yeah.
you mentioned, you're still learning this because now you're kind of practicing it. But like, not everybody is or wants to be a leader, right? Some people want to do a position for their entire careers and they're totally okay with that. But for those interested in being able to articulate thoughts like the way you are, what experience did you have to be able to create this version of yourself?
That's funny. So a big part of it is just repetition. I mean, doing it a lot. And for me, it was so I started an online school with a coworker like 10 years ago. God, I keep saying that. It's probably longer than that now. It's probably like 12 years ago. For people who wanted to get into animation. And I did lectures. I recorded videos, which was great. But I would do these live critiques every day. I would do them once a day for the most. I think I did them every day for like years. And so I got pretty good at giving people feedback, um, kind of gathering my thoughts, articulating them, and communicating them in a way that uh, was again this idea of like having people understand certain things. And through that process, I learned ways that were better at communicating things. Like if you're giving somebody feedback, never say never say like if I'm looking at one of your designs, I would never say, okay, what you need to do here is you need to do this, or what was done here, like you didn't do this quite well enough. You make you either talk about the creation like it's a third person thing, like you talk about the thing, or you talk about how we collaboratively are going to be better at this. Um, in terms of leadership, I had a really great guy when I was at the animation studio. There were a couple people because I was kind of in this because you have to have somebody believe in you when
Yeah.
you're in a creative role. And I had there were a couple people. There was I'll just rattle off some names that won't matter to your listeners at all, but just to give them credit, there was a woman named Jackie Jones, another woman named Julie Zachary, and a guy named Andrew Milstein, who was the president of the company. And I remember they just like we needed to change pipeline. They just like brought me in and were like, okay, we need you to help because I've been doing this teaching for a while. They're like, we need you to help do this. We need you to lead a team. And that was I kind of got thrown into the fire there. And through their mentorship and coaching, and they really helped me kind of find my voice and find my rhythm. And then a lot of it too is just having a clear conviction in what you want is a very thing is a thing with a leadership role. And by that I mean simplifying it down to understanding what you want out of your team, how you evaluate them, make sure that's clearly communicated, and then just stick with that. Being a leader sometimes is real boring. Like think about like you're a politician and you're out on the campaign trail and you want to talk about all the things that you're going to do, but really the audience really needs to hear like the two or three things that are going to have the most impact on their life. So you'll talk about healthcare, lowering taxes, or whatever your thing is. I don't know. I'm not a politician, but you have to say them over and over and over and over and over again until because the audience isn't it's not going to be the same each time. And so even though it sounds like you're droning on to yourself, you kind of have to do it over and over and over again. The other thing, I'm sorry, the last one that I'll say about this is I also waited tables and bartended for a really long time. That also made me very good at presenting, in that I could say like the specials of the day or describe the flow of the restaurant. I worked at like this family style restaurant where the menu was on the wall and I had to say the spiel over and over and over again. That you realize that once you get, like, once you know the content, then you can just work on your delivery
Hmm.
of that information. And so that's kind of what I've learned over time, is like make sure to get really comfortable with the content and what you're talking about, and then you can feel more, then you can genuinely be more confident when you're talking about it.
Very,
Sorry, that
very.
was a lot.
No, no, beautifully said. Very, very, very similarly, though, for those of maybe somebody's heard me talk about this before. I formerly taught painting classes at like one of those wine bar things, and like the same thing. The greatest managerial experience that I ever got was there. It's stepping on a half a stage and being able to command a room and instruct people with the lowest levels of creative IQ on how to do something with very simplified steps, and like understanding how to break down the process for people that you'll never see again over and over was like instrumental to the way that like I took that on into managing a team. And it was like I would have never had those fundamentals through some online course or whatever. It was like that experience very similar to you waiting tables. And so that I like that you kind of bring that to the forefront of like it doesn't have to be glamorous, it doesn't have to be fancy, you don't necessarily even need a mentor. It could be through real life other practices that people do. I do want to loop back. You mentioned doing online classes or teaching, and
Mhm.
now at the forefront of your online community through school with a K. You have this 3D artist community that you've kind of built this very, very vibrant. Like they're very like comment friendly. They like interact with you. Like you recently invited me in, and like I was shocked at their response. I honestly like, and it just it's a testament to like who is part of that group. They want to learn. They want to be able to bounce ideas off one another. Um, can you give me like the why of you doing this? Even you
Yeah.
mentioned 12 years ago you started a different version, but I assume a lot of it's carried over.
Yeah, so the thing I started 12 years ago was an online school specifically for people who wanted to do lighting on animated films. And I did that with my business partner for a long time. And we got to a point where I'd gotten this new job. She had, and we kind of we had different paths that we wanted to go on with it. She really wanted to do animation education for younger kids, like junior high, high school, that type of age group, which I was like, that is awesome. You should do that. That's not really the path that I want to go down for. I took on this role at Adobe where again I was seeing all these different 3D opportunities and I was like, I really want to open this up and say that 3D is not just for entertainment, that it's really for all these other industries. So we kind of we parted ways, and I spent about a year and a half just like figuring out how I was going to approach this new challenge of like, because I basically had all these friends who'd worked in games and film and visual effects and commercials who were out of work. I don't know if you know, there's Hollywood strikes that ended productions and it never really recovered. And there's a lot of reasons why there's a lot of people looking for work right now. And I'm seeing them and I'm seeing all these opportunities in, again, other 3D, other creative sectors that are new to 3D, that again, like the job titles aren't the same, so the entertainment people don't know that they exist, and the hiring managers these places don't know where to find the talent. So I was like, I need to find something that connects everybody together. It started with a newsletter I have. It's just called the 3D artist newsletter. So I started writing that about a year and a half ago just to like get some ideas down. And I played around with this idea of starting a online community, but I didn't know what that looked like. I knew I didn't want to do a Discord community because I had struggled with them in the past for 3D sake. I know they work for a lot of people. And I think Discord's an incredible platform, but for us, it always turned into students who were trying to learn, and then it just became like this other thing, and it really wasn't a good place to gather professionals. So I joined a kind of a community of community builders to get some advice. And somebody said something to me. They're like, and it was through school, which is where I learned about the school platform. And they said, yeah, in order to, because I wanted buy-in, I wanted people who had commitment. They said the secret sauce is like $20 a month. And I was like, what, really? And so I was like, yeah, just charge $20 a month. It'll keep it'll create buy-in on everybody because people are giving money. So you have buy-in. And I was like, well, I'm not looking for this to be like a profitable thing. Like it's also probably a conflict of interest with my job if I do this and make a bunch of money off it or something. So what I did was I took that and I was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect $20 a month from people, but I'm going to keep it very open. I'm going to put that money into a pool. We're going to use that money for the community to pay for workshops and other resources and whatever else. So what that did was it created this, so then I launched it about not quite 6 months ago now, but I launched this community, started collecting people, and it's even better than I anticipated it because it's that little bit of like $20 a month makes people aware that they're like buying into something and people are committed to it like you've seen. It's allowed me, and because I've been the orchestrator of it all, and so the school costs $99 a month, so I pay for that. That's my buy-in fee for everything, and we pool this money, and then like I said, we've got close to $2,000 now that we'll use to hire somebody to just start doing some workshops or buy some software licenses or something. We're not quite sure what we're going to do with it, but this idea of it's more of like a co-op, like I call it a community, but it's like actually more of a co-op type of a thing where
Yeah.
everyone feels invested. And because of that, like we have a few sessions every week. We have an AMA that I host, which you are going to be a part of soon, where we bring you in, we'll ask you questions, make sure everybody's aware of the work that you're doing. Mondays and Fridays, we also do like community hangout events, but those are more community led than me led. Like I'm in charge of this community, but I'm trying to like foster it so it takes on a life of its own, so everyone has buy-in on it. But at the end of the day, the point of the community is I want because I talked about this like segmenting of different industries and they're all developing on their own islands. I want everybody to know about all the different 3D jobs and 3D things that are available to them so that they are aware of the career possibilities. Because again, like I worked in entertainment for a long time. It was awesome. It was a pure dream come true. I got my name in credits. I got both my name's kids in the credits of movies as production babies as that when they were born.
Wow.
I got to do that and it was cool. And now like I'm at a point where I want to explore other things. And so it's just at different points in your career, there are going to be things that you want to dive into. And so making sure that people know what's out there is cool. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean I just see it now that you've invited me, and it's refreshing. It makes me like kind of want to build one for footwear design, honestly. Like just like it's more of an expansion of a lot of the things that I've been doing in micro forces, but just in a concentrated area. And I agree with you on the Discord comment. I've kind of seen people try it in that realm, and sometimes it kind of works, sometimes it really doesn't. It's hard to manage. But yeah, it's really amazing that you've kind of always put people first like this as your career has progressed, and you're always open to helping people. So even you've been very generous with your time and getting to know me after we hopped on an intro call, a month or so ago now. So I really appreciate it, and clearly doing good things for other people has a benefit because you've seen that rise in your own career. I do
Yeah.
like asking people if we were to talk again, let's just say we didn't speak, and I know we're going to speak in between now and 6 months from now, but if we were to speak again for the first time in 6 months, what would we be celebrating? Is there something that
Mm.
you are working towards or working on that you haven't yet announced or have been thinking about doing? Or maybe it's just something personal. I don't know if your wife's expecting another child or something like that, but what's something that we would be celebrating in 6 months?
That's a great question. No, we're not expecting it. We've got two. That's where I'm done. I've got a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old. I am good. Um, no, the thing that I am, if you would ask me right now, I mean, obviously, like growing the community, like writing more newsletter entries is always fun. For me, so here's the silly one. This is a little off the wall. So, I am in my like explorations and in being like naively curious about things. I When the Apple Vision Pro was announced, I was like, oh, this is dope. This is going to be groundbreaking. I went out and I got one I was in the first wave of people that got them, and I got it and I use it regularly and I think it's great. And I got into it thinking like I'm going to make like photoreal assets that are going to be in this virtual space or whatever. And I think that there's uh, I think that eventually we can get to that, but the technology just isn't there yet. Like I think that there's a lot visually about there are basically visual components that you can't replicate in that rendering engine. Like it just doesn't work. So I was kind of thinking about it more and more, and and I think that like the creativity in the virtual space, in the augmented space, is going to be much more like motion graphics than it is like 3D immersive. Like because I think about things a lot like from the animation standpoint. You have two ways you can go. You can either make things look as real as you want, or you got to go stylized. And I think that forever animation and 3D was in the entertainment sector was trying to get more and more believable, more and more photoreal, more and more lifelike. And then within the last like 5, 6, 7 years, we're like, Spider Verse, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like we did Peanuts, we did Demona, like let's just get weird with it. It's more fun. And so for me, looking at all these, like I kind of fell into that when I started creating content for the Apple Vision Pro. I was like, oh, I'm gonna try and make it as real as possible. And I was like, you know what? I actually don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to
Mm.
be much more simple, clean, informative graphics and things that are like better user experiences through simplicity. And so I think, and I don't know where this is leading. I'm just doing research in it right now of like what a spatial kind of motion graphics looking thing would be, and kind of diving into that world a little bit because I can see it more as augmenting more like augmenting our reality with simple information and graphics and more informative things, but in a clear, non-intrusive way. Like whenever you talk to people about like this idea, they're like, "Oh, I can see it now. I've got my like VR glasses on. It's just billboards of ads everywhere." And it's like, no, I don't, not like that.
Mm.
Just like I don't know. I'm trying to visualize what that means in my head. But basically, it's a using 3D with 3D workflows to get spatial stuff, but the actual visuals are simple, clean. I think of like uh, the Apple Watch, like all their exercise logos. Like I love how just like they're just like stick people, but they do the job so well of communicating and they have like little animations that are enticing. And so like how does that work in a spatial space? So I don't know. That's what I'm playing around with in my head right now. I have nothing tangible. So I guess like 6 months from now would be like something tangible out of those words that I just said.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing, some of the intricacies of what goes on in your brain and how you think about them because I haven't heard of it that way. There is I have some friends who do design in VR, right? Primarily through Gravity Sketch as a platform, which you're familiar with, or obviously Adobe Substance or whatever it is, but like I don't think it's going to be a this or that. It's going to be and, right? It's like it's combining these different things into the normalized process and then accentuating it with these, simplified motion graphics or whatever it is as the future. And so you're clearly ahead of the game because most people are terrified of it still. I would be one of them. But keeping
Mhm.
your learning cap always on is really amazing. Um, Michael, last question for you, and then we'll wrap. Thank you for your time. What's for any young creative mind, either just got started, getting started, kind of looking for the next phase of their life or their career, like, is there one piece of advice that you always go back to in your own life that's helped you at different stages, whether that's before a promotion or versus something that like a goal that
Mhm.
you've set, or is there anything that you'd want to share with the audience?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm gonna steal one. Ira Glass, the NPR guy, had this really great comment one time. A really great quote that I always go back to. It's that when you're developing, when you're especially when you're first starting off, your taste develops a lot faster than your craft, and that you're gonna let's say you're learning how to draw, and you know what a good drawing looks like, but the time it's going to take your hand, your skill, your craft to improve to the point where you're making things that you think look good it's hard because you'll be able to it'll take a long time. And so what's going to happen is you're going to be creating things that aren't good enough, and you're going to see that they're not good enough, and you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to think that I don't have it. Other people have it, I don't have it. But the truth is that you just have to remind yourself that your eye has developed faster than your craft, and you need to give yourself time to get up to that point. Because somebody else has said it this way. It's like we've all got 10,000 bad drawings in us. It's just like get those out as fast as possible. Like just keep going and keep pushing through it, because it's not a none of us are good out of the gate. Like I'm if I did footwear design right now, I would be a bad footwear designer. I need to get some bad designs out until I get some good ones. But allowing yourself that space, it can be tough. So um, just understand that you're going to um, to reach that point where your work isn't going to be up to the level that you want it to be at. But we've all had to push through that at one point or another to get to where we are now. And then the other bit of advice that I would give would be to find some sort of mentor or somebody who can give you with industry experience doing the thing that you want to do, who can give you feedback on your work. Because the problem the one when I was first learning, there was a teacher that I had named Bridget Gaynor who had lit on films before, and I thought I was doing really well, and I thought like this stuff looks great, and then I would show her, and she was like, no, this, and this, and this, and this, and I was frustrated by it because I was like, she doesn't understand. Like that looks good. Like why is she giving me these notes? And then I would do them, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, that looks so much better. She was right 100% of the time. Or likewise, so one of two things is going to happen. Either you think it looks great and you can't see any area that can improve on, but people with experience can see lots of ways that you can improve on it. Or the opposite, where this idea of you've developed your taste faster than your craft happens, where you just look at it and you're like, dude, this is not good enough. I can see mine and I can see that one over there, but I don't understand why I can't. And they'll be the ones that can tell you how to improve it and how like what are the areas that you should focus on. That one's a little bit harder because professionals are busy and yada yada yada, but you need critiques of your work to get better. You need professional level critiques on your craft, whether that's through school, whether that's through personal mentorship. I don't know, but like you have to get that in your development in order to get better. Because that's how I, in film we do these things called dailies, where every day you got to put up your work. Whatever you worked on the day before, you put in front of the art director, your supervisor, the director of the film looks at it and gives you feedback on it. And it's there's 1,500-ish shots in a film, so there's a lot to go through. So they're really quick, and so it's like quick, kind of brutal, not brutal like in a bad way, but just like quick and direct. I should say direct, not brutal. Quick, direct critiques that you've got to learn how to go from. And it was through that process of doing that every day for over a decade that really refined me as an artist. So you find your version of that. Find a class that provides feedback, something where you can get feedback on it. Your work is incredibly valuable.
That thank you for sharing those two major unique pieces of advice that we haven't heard before on this show. And so I think it's easy for people to just be like, oh, find your passion or your whatever it is, and like, or follow your passion. And like you really gave some very tangible, practical things that people can implement into their lives. And so thank you for that, Michael. I'll plug in all your socials, your website, your community below in the links, so people can definitely go check it out. Go check out his community of 3D artists. Subscribe to his newsletter. Michael, thank you so much. This has been tremendous. I think there's a ton of value that everybody has gained from this. So I appreciate your time in joining us.
No problem, David. Like I said, I felt you gave me the introduction of feeling a connection to you immediately when we met, and I was like, I need to talk to this guy more. So it's been a real pleasure getting to know you, and I'm very excited to continue working with you. It's great.